Ms. Harmon, if you would call the case, please.
Good morning. Today is May 5th, 2022. The time is now 10:03 a.m. Today we will hear case 2020-004 AP for Mr. Daniel Dwyer of the Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department. Mr. Dwyer received a 4-day suspension for violating Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department Work Rule 1.00, appropriate action required. Mr. Herman Sloan will be chairing today's hearing.
All right. And if I could get you all for the record, we've been discussing this matter for a while, Mr. LoRusso and Ms. Baytop, but if I can get you to identify yourselves for the record, please.
Lance LoRusso, counsel for Danny Dwyer.
Good morning, Keisha Baytop, representing the city of Atlanta.
All right. And Mr. Dwyer, you have a lawyer here, Mr. LoRusso, who's representing you. And I am Herman Sloan. As Ms. Harmon indicated, I will be the hearing officer for this matter. Just some preliminary instructions. This is a civil service review hearing. The Civil Service Board has very limited authority, and that is to review and hear appeals from adverse employment actions that may have been taken by the city. And Mr. LoRusso, Ms. Baytop, we sort of touched on this before, but I need to ask officially on the record whether or not there have been any discussions concerning settlement, and whether or not you all think that there will be a need for any additional discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. We have had some discussions as early as and recently as yesterday. I do not believe any further discussions would be fruitful, and we were unable to come to a resolution.
Correct.
All right. All right. And Mr. Newman, we're going to go off the record while I outline for Mr. Dwyer what the proceedings will be. There will be some similarities, Captain Dwyer, between this administrative hearing and a court proceeding. But this is not a court proceeding at all. This is an administrative proceeding. Each side will have an opportunity to present witnesses. Each side will have an opportunity to cross-examine, that is, ask questions of the other person's witnesses. Each side will have an opportunity to make an opening statement, make a closing statement. If at any point in time during the course of the proceedings, Captain, you have any questions, you're going to have to communicate them to your lawyer.
Yes, sir.
Since you have a lawyer representing you, you will not be able to ask questions of the witnesses. You will not be able to make objections. You will not be able to make arguments. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
And part of the discussion that we have had earlier was regarding a video. And this board, as an administrative board, is not bound by the rules of evidence that apply to a criminal or civil court case. Hearsay is admissible. Most evidence will be admitted unless it's unduly cumulative or it is not relevant. All right. And we are doing this virtually. And I still want to ask if you would mute your cell phone so that we will not be disturbed by the ringing of cell phones. And Captain Dwyer, do you have any questions, sir, about what's going to take place here?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Newman, let's go back on the record. Ms. Baytop, Mr. LoRusso, are there any stipulated facts that you all wish to put in the record?
No,
I don't-
sir.
I don't believe so. No, sir.
All right.
Mr. Sloan, for my purposes, to be courteous to your other panel members, can I have their names in case they have questions so I can respond to them appropriately?
Mr. LoRusso, this is a one panel member hearing.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw some other people. Thank you.
Well, there may be other persons, but they are not, because of the extent or the nature of the proposed discipline, it's a one-person hearing. I am the hearing board.
Thank you.
All right. And I need to let all of the parties know that, first of all, I am familiar with the address where the fire took place. It's in my neighborhood. I do not know the person. I know that it was a female who died as a result of the fire. I do not know her. I do not know her family members, but I'm familiar with the location. And I want to put that out there for transparency and total candor, so that you all, if you, Mr. LoRusso, or you, Ms. Baytop, feel that that is somehow disqualifying, I want you to know that from the outset.
Mr. Sloan, if I may be heard, I do not believe that is a legal conflict. I appreciate your disclosing it. I don't believe it creates an ethical conflict. And I've checked with my client, and to the extent that you need us to affirmatively state, we have no objection to you sitting as the panel chair and panel in total.
All right. Ms. Baytop.
Sir Chair, I do not have any objections. I trust your judgment and your integrity, sir.
All right. All right. So are we ready to begin?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Baytop, is that an opening statement on behalf of the city?
Yes, sir. Good morning again, Sir Chair. Thank you for taking the time to hear this case. Again, my name is Keisha Baytop, and I will be representing the city. Today before you is in reality a very simple case. On June the 27th, 2019, Mr. Danny Dwyer, then Lieutenant Dwyer, was the officer in charge of Truck 16 and its crew members. During the course of that shift, Truck 16 was dispatched to a working fire, and they were given the assignment of primary search. While Mr. Dwyer's crew members were putting on the entirety of their gear and retrieving the necessary tools for the task at hand, Mr. Dwyer took it upon himself and made the decision by himself to enter into the structure without his crew members. The command officer of the fire scene operation was not aware of his actions during the incident, and neither did the command officer give Mr. Dwyer permission at any time to enter that structure without his crew members. This morning, Sir Chair, you will clearly be able to hear and decipher the facts. Fire Chief Roderick Smith will testify that Mr. Dwyer's actions were in absolute and direct conflict with the policies of AFRD. The appellant and his representative will attempt to convince you, Sir Chair, of several irrelevant factors and not facts. They will suggest that in spite of the fact Mr. Dwyer violated the policy, that he somehow had the right and the authority to do what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. Fire Chief Smith is prepared to testify that regardless of Mr. Dwyer's right intentions, wrong actions were taken on the fire scene that day. Fire Chief Smith is also prepared to testify that those wrong actions unnecessarily jeopardized and compromised the fire scene and could have very well caused injuries to other firefighters and even worse, fatalities. They will also attempt to deflect any and all culpability by means of critique and finger pointing at others that were present at the fire scene. However, Mr. Dwyer's actions were willful, self-initiated, blatant, deliberate, and evident. You will hear further testimony from Mr. Dwyer himself, admitting multiple times that he did in fact enter the structure without his crew members. This case is indeed a rare case. Of the many years that I have served in the capacity of fire advocate, this will be the first time that I have heard of an incident as such. Does this mean that this great city of Atlanta does not have brave men and women who risk their lives each and every day for strangers? Of course it does not. But what it does mean is that these brave men and women save lives within the parameters of the policy. They know that no matter what, they always stay together and maintain crew integrity. Every sworn employee of AFRD have been taught that from the beginning when first entering the fire academy and throughout their career. They know that whether they agree with the policies and procedures of AFRD or not, they took an oath and swore to uphold and follow them. Mr. Dwyer had this same training and took this same oath. Fire Chief Randall Slaughter was the one who ultimately made the decision to impose corrective actions regarding this case. And it took a great deal of courage to know that many would be against him because of the stance that he knew he had to take. There were plenty of opinions, accusations, and anger that Chief Slaughter had to defend and endure. After all, we are talking about a human life that was lost, and no one, especially within the department, ever feels good about civilian casualties or loss of life in any manner. And while Mr. Dwyer was deemed a hero by many for attempting to save the civilian's life, the policy does not change. I said this at the beginning of this opening statement that this was a simple case, but it truly takes for someone to see past all the sensationalism, to see past all of the court of public opinion, to see past all the popularity contest, and to simply see the truth. Well, Sir Chair, that brave someone is you today. The decision you make here today will set a precedence within not only the city, but also within AFRD, and will establish the fact that no one, especially a leader or a company officer, can simply do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and how they want to do it. Therefore, I ask that at the conclusion of this hearing, with all of the facts before you, that you would rule to uphold the decision that AFRD Fire Chief made, which was the 4 12-hour days of suspension for violation of AFRD Work Rule 1.00, appropriate action required. Thank you, Sir Chair.
Mr. LoRusso. Is there an opening, sir? You're on mute.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'd like to put up an exhibit that has already been stipulated to, and that's A5. I want to thank you for taking the time to hear this. I do agree this is an easy case. I do agree that it's a question of courage. I will tell you that Chief Slaughter had so much courage in disciplining Danny Dwyer that he didn't even appear at this hearing today. This case isn't about me. It's not about Ms. Baytop. It's not about you, sir. It's not even about my client. It's about Sally Scrine, who you see on that picture right there. A woman who lived in the city of Atlanta, who held on and lived in the city of Atlanta, probably saw more changes in the city of Atlanta than anybody in this room combined, who lived behind burglar bars to protect herself, who lived in a modest house and went about her business and lived her life and associated with her family, and recognized that if she ever needed help, if the worst thing that any of us ever imagined, our house is on fire, she could call 911, and those trucks and those men and women of the Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department were going to come to her house. They were going to break through those burglar bars. They were going to break into that house, and they were going to rescue her. And that, sir, is exactly what Lieutenant, then Acting Captain Danny Dwyer did on June 27th and 28th of 2019. I have represented public safety officers for many years. And what he did was something that firefighters will tell you is normal. There's nothing normal about going into a fire that's 600 to 1,000 degrees. Somebody else's house. You don't even know where you're going. But that's what he did that day. You can take the exhibit down. And what you're going to hear is this is a very simple case. And what you're going to see is like a couple of kids playing telephone in kindergarten. The question was asked over and over during this investigation. Did you go in the house alone, Captain Dwyer? No. Did you go in without your crew? Yes. So you went in without your crew, you went in alone. Well, no, I didn't go in alone. What the facts are going to show you is that Danny Dwyer, not only an experienced firefighter, but a flashover instructor for the city of Atlanta, thousands of dollars spent to train him to do that. He has trained probably everybody in the fire department on flashover scenarios in a simulator, was in an opportunity to give Sally Scrine a chance. He did not go in the house alone. He went in the house with another captain you're going to hear from named David Ware from Engine 22, and a firefighter named Devin Barkley, and a charged 1 3/4 inch line. 250 gallons of water a minute can be thrown on a fire. He was in the house approximately 50 seconds after receiving 2 orders. One from Captain Ware, you're on primary search, and you'll understand what that means by the end of the case. And second, from Battalion Chief, Incident Commander Sean Johnson, you're on primary search. You're going to hear the words, truck 16, you're on primary. So he looked at Captain Ware and Devin Barkley, who went in with a charged hose. They secured the scene by pressing the fire back, going to the source as they're trained to do, and he started looking for the known entrapment because neighbors said, we have someone there. He grabbed her, he started pulling her out, and he was able to pull her out before his crew was able to enter. And they weren't able to enter because they're drivers. On a truck, there's 2 drivers. They had no equipment on, no protective equipment. They had to suit up. And what you're going to find in the 45 seconds he was in that apartment, in the 60 to 90 seconds it took from the time they got there, if he had waited for those 2 men on his crew, instead of going in with the 2 firefighters he went in with, Sally Scrine would have lost her chance because due to a flashover, that window was gone. And you're going to hear the why. Why would this brave firefighter be disciplined? It has nothing to do with sticking to your guns, and policies are important, and policies are guidelines. You're going to hear the why. And the why is about as old as mankind itself. Embarrassment and covering for your own mistakes. Not Danny Dwyer's mistakes, not Danny Dwyer's embarrassment. But you're going to hear exactly why Danny Dwyer got written up. And I agree, this is an easy case. By the time we're done, you will be willing to exercise the discretion given to you to rescind this suspension in its entirety and clean up the record of this outstanding servant to the city. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Baytop.
Yes, sir.
And one thing that I neglected to do was at the outset to let everyone know that there are time limits.
Yes.
Okay, that's approximately 80 minutes for each side to present their witnesses and their evidence. Okay, Ms. Baytop,
Yes, sir.
if you would, ma'am, call your first witness.
Yes, sir. That would be Fire Chief Roderick M. Smith.
And Mr. Sloan, if I could verify that all the other witnesses have been sequestered, I believe they have. I just wanted to put that on the record, invoking the rule of sequestration.
Ms. Harmon, is that correct?
Yes, I did put in the chat a list of the members in the waiting room, and they will not have access to the hearing.
Thank you, ma'am. You're off.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Morning, Chief.
Chief.
Yes, sir.
I am Herman Sloan. I'm acting as the hearing officer for this appeal.
Okay.
Sir, if I can start off by asking, do you have any objections to taking an oath?
No, I do not.
I could get you to raise your right hand for me, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. And if I could get you to state your name and your position and the number of years that you've been with the city.
I am Roderick Smith. I'm the fire chief, and I've been with the City of Atlanta Fire Rescue Department for 29 years.
Ms. Baytop.
Thank you, sir. Good morning again, Chief Smith. Are you familiar with OPS case number 2019 IA055 involving, at that time, Lieutenant Daniel Dwyer?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And although you were not the fire chief at the time of this incident, have you had the opportunity to fully and thoroughly review the file?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, please, if you don't mind, can you put C1 up on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And Chief, I'm going to ask you, once that document appears on the screen, as a part of that review, did you examine this document known as the Notice of Proposed Adverse Action?
Yes, I did.
Okay. At this time, the city would like to enter into evidence C1.
Any objections? You're on mute, Mr. LoRusso.
No, sir. Sorry about that, Mr. Sloan.
No problem. It's admitted without objection.
And not to delay, but Sherelle in my office was kicked off, so I apologize. That's why I was on mute. We're trying to get her back in, and Ms. Harmon is helping us out.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Harmon is going to be, oh goodness, I'm sorry, I'm going to work you, Ms. Harmon. If you would please place C2 on the screen. Okay, Chief, and do you recognize this document known as the Notice of Final Adverse Action?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and the city would like to enter into evidence C2.
Any objections, Mr. LoRusso?
No, sir.
Okay. Chief, Lieutenant Dwyer was charged with violating AFRD Work Rule 1.00 appropriate action required, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And more specifically, the subsection A, which reads responding in an appropriate manner to every situation encountered, correct?
yes.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, if you would, please, could you put C3 on the screen? Okay, Chief, in this particular document that is before you, do you recognize this as the internal investigation complaint package for Lieutenant Daniel Dwyer?
Yes.
Okay. The city would like to enter into evidence C3.
Any objections?
No, sir.
Submitted.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, if you would, please, could you scroll down to page number 3 of this document? Right there, please. Thank you. Chief, there is a designated area for the complainant to briefly describe the allegation. If you would, please, if you're able to view it clearly, can you read that aloud?
Yes, it says on June 27th, 2019, units responded to a working fire at 3412 Collier Drive Northwest. During the incident, truck 16 was given the assignment of primary search on the first floor. While performing those duties, truck 16 OIC, Lieutenant Daniel Dwyer, entered the structure without his crew members and removed a 94-year-old victim. During the critique, the shift afterwards, Lieutenant Dwyer was asked who was with you from your crew inside the structure, and Lieutenant Dwyer stated no one, which is direct conflict of maintaining crew integrity and not freelancing. For his actions, I am charging him with Work Rule 1.0, appropriate action required, subsection A, responding in an appropriate manner to every situation encountered.
Okay, thank you, sir. So within the body of the allegation, the complainant, Battalion Chief Sean Johnson, mentions maintaining crew integrity and freelancing, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And would you agree that an accurate definition of freelancing would be an individual deciding to work independently and committing to tasks and acts without the express knowledge or consent of an officer or incident commander?
correct.
Does AFRD have a policy or a guideline regarding those particular subjects?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, if you would, please, can you place C4 on the screen? Okay, Chief, and do you recognize this document that is entitled Rules of Engagement SOG 400.09?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and the city would move to enter C4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Mr. Sloan, it is not a certified document, and it would not take much for the city to get a certified document to admit, and I believe that they have an obligation to submit a certified document of a policy if it's going to be put into evidence. This is actually different from just a document they generated. This is a policy and procedure approved by the city of Atlanta.
Ms. Baytop, any response?
Well, the fire chief is here to attest to the fact that this is a certified document and policy that has been within the department, obviously, since 2012. So the fire chief can validate the validity of this particular policy.
Not a matter of validating it. That's a different standard. It's not certified. It does not have a certification stamp. It does not have a certification from the clerk that it is true and accurate.
And Mr. LoRusso, I would agree with you, but for the fact that I'm sitting as a part of the city, if you will. The Civil Service Review Board is authorized and enacted and created by the Atlanta City Council. And as such, we can take judicial notice, although this is not a judicial proceeding, we can take notice of those ordinances and laws of the city. Now, at some point in time, the city may have to present a certified copy, but for purposes of this hearing, I'm going to allow it in.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Chief, going back to this document, at the time of this particular incident, was this the governing policy?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and within this policy, it outlines 10 specific rules for safe fireground operations, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Ms. Harmon, if you would please, if you could move it down a little bit to fully see number 2. Thank you, right there. Chief, if you would please take note of number 2, where it states policy. Could you please read that out loud?
Yes, it says, it is the policy of the AFRD to operate under the same guidelines and procedures during all working incidents. The rules of engagement have been designed to ensure all personnel operate in a safe and effective manner.
Thank you. The next section under number 3, which is entitled responsibility. In this particular section, it spells out the responsibilities of the Deputy Chief of Operations, the Battalion Chief, and the Captain, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and at the time of this incident, Lieutenant Dwyer was acting in the official capacity as a captain or an officer in charge of truck number 16, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you would please, Ms. Harmon, can you scroll down some? I think we're going to be on page number 4, and it's going to be bullet number 5 or rule number 5. Thank you. If you'll scroll up just a little bit more so we can see the full number 5. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Chief, if I can draw your attention to rule number 5, if you would please just read aloud the heading of number 5.
Accountability. Go in together, stay together, and come out together. No freelancing.
Okay, and out of all of the 10 rules, this rule is the only rule that involves, and this is the teacher part in me, that involves exclamation marks throughout its verbiage, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously that is purposed and designed to stress significance. So can you please explain why this 5th rule is so important?
Well, the essentials of operating in an IDLH environment from a safety perspective for crews is to maintain that crew integrity. Everything that we do is in a team nature. And so we don't go in alone, and we definitely don't come out alone. But more importantly, maintaining that integrity ensures that we have an accountability for each member and that somebody is aware of where they are and that we're operating in a safe space at all times.
Thank you, sir. So throughout this particular rule number 5, there is accountability on the chief officer level, the company officer level, and the firefighter level, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And again, during the time of this incident, was Lieutenant Dwyer considered to fall under the category of the company officer?
yes,
Okay. And Chief, each one of these levels, it states, and I quote, no freelancing, and that's all caps, exclamation mark, correct?
yes.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, if you would, please, can you place C5 on the screen? Okay, Chief, and do you recognize this document?
Yes,
Okay, and would this be the official statement from Sergeant Michael Allen, who was one of Lieutenant Dwyer's crew members?
yes.
Okay, at this time, the city would move to enter C5 into evidence.
Any objections, Mr. LoRusso?
No, sir.
Admitted without objection.
Ms. Harmon, can you scroll up just a little bit? Thank you. Chief, if you would, please, I know I'm asking you to do a lot of reading, but I want it captured for the record. Can you please read the statement out loud?
This entire statement,
Yes, sir, please.
it is addressed to Battalion Chief Michelle Middlebrooks of the Field Operations Division, from Michael Allen, Sergeant 16 C Shift Field Operations, dated July 15th, 2019. Subject is Collier Drive Fire Incident. On June 28th, 2019, Truck 16 was dispatched to a working fire on Collier Drive. When we arrived on the scene, Truck 16 crew was given search with possible entrapment. Lieutenant advised us we had search and meet him in front of the home. So we put our turnout gear on and gathered tools to head that way. As we got to the house and began to mask up for search, conditions worsened, and I heard Lieutenant tell Sergeant Sewell and Solomon, who was on the porch, to assist him with the patient. At that time, patient was removed from the porch down the stairs into the yard where Grady and Engine 28 provided care. After that, Chief Johnson called to go defensive due to conditions. Shortly after, we were sent back in to search and pull some ceiling. If you require any additional information concerning this case, please advise me at mallen@atlantanga.gov.
Okay, Chief, thank you. And so according to Sergeant Allen's statement, Lieutenant Dwyer had advised him as well as the crew in its entirety that they did have an assignment, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Sergeant Allen also states within the body of his statement that Lieutenant Dwyer advised him to meet him in front of the home, correct?
yes.
Okay. If you would please, Ms. Harmon, can you place C6 on the screen, please? Okay, Chief, and would you recognize, or do you recognize this document on the screen?
Yes,
Okay, and would this be the official statement from Sergeant Roderick Sewell, who was the other crew member of Lieutenant Dwyer's?
yes.
Okay, and at this time, the city would move to enter into evidence C6.
No
Any
objection.
objections?
No objection, sir.
It's admitted.
Okay. I'm not going to make you read, I'm not going to ask you, sir, to read this aloud, but if you would, in the body of this particular statement, it's about the third sentence, which starts with Lieutenant Dwyer told me and Sergeant Mike Allen. Could you start reading from there, please?
Sure. It says, Lieutenant Dwyer told me and Sergeant Mike Allen we were assigned primary search and to meet him at the front door.
Okay. And so again, Sergeant Sewell is stating that Lieutenant Dwyer again told his crew members to meet him, whether it was the front door or the front yard, but in the vicinity of the front of the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you would, please, Miss Harmon, can you place C7 on the screen? Chief, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay. And excuse me. And would this be the official statement from Battalion Chief Stephen Hill?
Yes.
Okay. The city would move to enter into evidence C7.
Any objections?
No, sir.
It's admitted.
Okay, Chief. If you would please, just the last sentence, which starts with during the after action review. Can you please read that sentence?
During the after action review, Chief Sean Johnson asked Lieutenant Danny Dwyer about who was with him during his search, and he advised that he was by himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harmon. You can remove that. Thank you so much. And so for clarity, Chief, the assignment for the primary search was not solely given to Lieutenant Dwyer to carry out, but rather the entire crew of Truck 16, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so cohesively, all three statements that you have read confirms that Lieutenant Dwyer entered this structure without his crew members, which is in direct conflict with the rules of engagement policy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and would you also agree that Lieutenant Dwyer's actions were in violation of what is defined as freelancing?
Yes.
Okay, and the policy which you read aloud for everyone to hear leaves no room or tolerance for freelancing, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Whether Lieutenant Dwyer entered the building with another crew, whether it's truck 22, engine 22, whomever, is not the question at hand. That is not what he was disciplined for, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. If indeed that were the case, he still negated to maintain integrity, the integrity of his crew, correct?
Correct.
Okay. As the fire chief, are you aware of any of your deputy chiefs who would permit, authorize, or approve of Lieutenant Dwyer's actions regarding this incident?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. And as the fire chief, are you aware of any of your assistant or battalion chiefs who would permit, authorize, or approve of Lieutenant Dwyer's actions regarding this incident?
No, not that I'm
Okay.
aware.
Okay. And Chief, what would have been the appropriate action or actions for Lieutenant Dwyer to have taken during this incident?
In the effort of maintaining the crew integrity as well as safety, the crew would have approached the structure together, and they would have entered and completed the assignment. And once the assignment was completed, they would have informed the incident commander who assigned them this assignment of the status and that the assignment had been completed.
Thank you, Chief. And one last question. is the rules of engagement policy, is that AFRD's expectation and standard for all its sworn employees during all working fire incidents?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. LoRusso, any cross-examination?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I am doing well. I've been better. Can you define freelancing for us again?
Yes, in my terms, freelancing is operating on personal accord versus how they were directed to operate. And so they're making decisions outside of the scope of incident management.
And you made a comment, we don't go in alone. We definitely don't go out alone. You expect your battalion chiefs to have responsibility for each member and make sure they're safe at all times. Did I say that accurately?
That is correct.
Now, you said that truck 16 was given responsibility for primary search, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now to be fair, Chief, you're here, so I'm going to ask you these questions, but you weren't at the scene that night, were you?
No, I was not.
You weren't incident commander?
No, sir, I was not.
You weren't making judgment calls?
No, I was not.
You didn't get a chance to manage this scene at all, did you?
No, I did not.
And Battalion Chief Sean Johnson was placed in that position to have control and manage that scene, correct?
Correct.
And Battalion Chief Sean Johnson was responsible for making sure we don't go in alone, we definitely don't go out alone, and to have responsibility for each member and make sure they're safe at all times, correct?
That is correct.
Now, have you listened to all of the audio of this case?
Yes, I have.
And you told this hearing officer that truck 16 was given primary search, but you neglected to tell them that engine 22 and truck 16 were given primary search. Can
Correct.
you tell us why you left that out?
No, I did not leave it out intentionally. We were discussing the actions of truck 16 on the scene.
And the purpose of firefighters staying together is to ensure that they're safe, correct?
That is correct.
Can you tell us how long, well, actually, let's go back to this. You agree that the two engineers who were on truck 16 were not equipped to run up to the front of the house when they immediately arrived, right? They had to put their turnout gear on?
Yes, sir, along with the officer.
So it's your understanding that Danny Dwyer did not have his turnout gear when he arrived?
It's my understanding that he was not fully complemented to enter any structure. So that meant that he had to complete putting everything on.
Okay, and you're talking about his breathing apparatus and his helmet, right?
And as well as hand tools.
Okay, and do you know how long it took him to get up to the front porch?
I do not.
Do you know how long it took the two engineers on truck 16 to get up to the front porch?
I do not.
You don't think that's important?
It is very important. It is important for the company officer because the company officer ultimately is responsible for the two individuals that are working with him.
Including making sure they don't approach a house that's on fire without their full complement of gear, correct?
That is correct.
I want to point your attention to C6 that you were asked about. And it's another part that apparently didn't get read into the record. You let me know if I'm reading this accurately. It's about halfway down. Okay. Lieutenant Dwyer told me and Sergeant Mike Allen we were assigned primary search and to meet him at the front door. Did I read that accurately?
That is correct.
Mr. Sloan, I'm moving kind of quickly. Please let me know if for some reason you need to pull something up. You should have a copy of the exhibit, sir. I just want to make sure that I'm not getting ahead of you.
You're good.
Me and Sergeant and Mike Allen continued to put our PPE and obtain tools necessary for the assignment. Did I read that accurately?
Correct.
That takes time, does it not?
Yes, it does.
They have to get it off. They have to get themselves off the truck. They have to get the equipment off the truck, and then they have to traverse the distance from the truck to the front door, correct?
That is correct.
Once we got to the steps of the house, it flashed on us. Did I read that accurately?
Yes.
Can a firefighter, even with equipment, enter a house when it's in a flashover?
No, sir.
Because it's dangerous, right?
Yes, it is.
And the chances of anybody in that house who's entrapped once it flashes over surviving are slim to none, correct?
That is correct.
And that is why when we look at your policy, it states, and this is your rules of engagement, C4, page 3. I'm sure you don't need to, you probably know this by heart, Chief. You've been there a long time. We risk a lot our lives to save a lot, savable life, correct?
That is correct.
We risk a little to save, to protect savable property. We risk nothing on what's not salvageable or worth nothing, correct?
Correct.
So by the official statement of the fire department, the thing you risk the most to save is a human life, correct?
That is correct.
How much time did it take from the time Danny Dwyer hit the front porch to the time of the flashover? You don't know that, do you?
I don't.
You don't know what the conditions were at the time to know whether or not an entry was possible when Danny Dwyer hit the door. But we do know that it was not possible when his crew reached the porch, correct?
That is correct.
So Danny Dwyer actually did not enter the house alone, did he?
According to his statement, he did.
And this is the statement that he was asked. Sergeant Johnson asked Lieutenant Dwyer who was with him during his search, and he advised he was by himself. That's on C7, correct?
Correct.
And that's a very important piece of information.
Yes, it is.
And you don't know if that's true. You just read that, correct?
Correct. I was not there.
And if he was asked who from your crew was with you, and he said no one, that would be accurate, correct?
Correct. According to what's in the package, yes.
Because all you can do is go by what's in the package because you weren't there.
Correct.
And if Danny Dwyer made the decision and actually went into the house with Captain Ware, a 20-year firefighter, and firefighter Devin Barkley, both of them with a charged 1 3/4-inch line, he did not put himself in jeopardy or his crew, did he?
Yes, he did. He put his crew in jeopardy because he left them unattended. It is the
So-
officer's responsibility to ensure that crew integrity is maintained and they operate as a unit. Without that head or that leader, they are not a unit. So they cannot complete their assignment.
Chief Smith,
Yes, sir.
what tenure does Sergeant Sewell have?
I don't know what Sergeant Sewell's tenure is on the job.
What tenure does Sergeant Allen have?
Sergeant Allen had a significant amount of years because he just recently retired.
About 28 years at the time of this incident, right?
Yes, sir.
So Danny Dwyer gives them an order to suit up and meet me on the porch. They've got experience as firefighters, and he left them to go suit up while he checked with the captain who was on the porch. And it's your testimony that he left them unattended?
Yes.
So
We
you
have a
trusted,
man for a reason.
you trusted these two gentlemen, Sewell and Allen, to drive $1.5 million worth of fire equipment through the streets of the city of Atlanta, but they can't be trusted to not have an officer in charge with them 50 feet from a house?
I object. Fire chief has already answered the question.
That's not
Has been
asked and
answered.
answered. That is
Excuse
not
me,
asked.
excuse me, I'm speaking. Thank you.
Ms. Baytop, he's asked several questions regarding this particular area, but that particular question has not been asked.
I'll repeat
Thank you,
it.
sir, Chair.
I can answer the question. Yes, we do trust them to drive the equipment. Under the emergency conditions, the officer is on the truck overseeing the operation thereof. And the expectation is that officer will continue oversight of their operation once they arrive on the scene of the call, whatever the assignment the unit is given.
So it's your testimony he put that Danny Dwyer put two seasoned firefighters in danger by having them stand next to their truck and get dressed.
What I'm saying is that because Lieutenant Dwyer left his crew, that unit was not able to complete the assignment that they were given.
Well, we've already established that there was a flashover by the time they reached the front porch. So if he waited for them, they wouldn't be able to complete that assignment, would they?
Well, the assignment probably would have changed. As we said before, I was not there. But however, from an incident commander's perspective, the assignment would have changed based on the conditions. But the crew integrity would have been in place because they would have been together to receive another assignment.
Okay, and let's talk about that, Chief, because we know the assignment changed. And Sean Johnson, as the incident commander, battalion chief on the scene, had an obligation to be able to see the front of the house. Do you agree?
He had to know what was going on in front of the house. He does not necessarily have to physically see the front of the house.
But he's got to have responsibility for each member and make sure it's safe at all times, correct?
Correct. That doesn't change his responsibility.
So at the time that Sergeant Sewell and Sergeant Allen hit the front porch, it had started to flash over. So you are absolutely correct, Chief. Battalion Chief Sean Johnson changed the orders at that point. Did he not?
Yes.
He told them to go defensive, didn't he?
Yes.
He told them to go defensive without checking and confirming that everyone was out of the structure, correct?
Yes.
So Battalion Chief Sean Johnson left Captain David Ware and firefighter Devin Barkley in a fully engulfed house in a flashover and gave orders for everyone else to back away and go defensive without verifying they were there.
Let me clarify something. He did not leave them. When you give the order to go defensive, what it changes is the mode of the operation. That means that everyone should come out. Once they come out, then there should be an all call to ensure that the crews and everyone are accounted for.
Is it your understanding that Battalion Chief Johnson did not admit that he lost track of engine 22 on the night of this fire?
What was that question again? I'm sorry.
Is it your understanding that Battalion Chief Johnson did not admit in the after action that he lost track of engine 22, specifically David Ware and Devin Barkley, and left them in a fully engulfed house?
Yes, I am aware that he said he lost track.
So he did not take responsibility for each member and their safety at all times, because if he had, he would have left people on the porch to make sure the fire was beaten down so they didn't have to fight it on their way out. Isn't that correct?
No, you would not have left people on the porch to fight a fire when you are going defensive.
Pick up A9. I'm going to show you what's been marked A9.
Okay.
What rating do these fire hoses have that they can take heat before they start to be destroyed or become unserviceable?
Are you looking for a temperature rating?
Yes, sir.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Well, they can withstand 1,000 degrees, can they not?
That sounds about right.
Well, and 1,000 degrees is not uncommon in a flashover, correct?
No, it's not.
So we know by operation, you don't throw your hoses out after every fire, so they can withstand 1,000 degrees. Fair enough?
That's pretty fair.
Ms. Baytop, I'm sorry, Ms. Harmon, we may be having some difficulty with exhibits. If we can't get this exhibit up, I'd ask you to indulge us and pull it up.
Absolutely.
It's A9, please. Can you just go ahead and pull it up, Ms. Harmon? Thank you. Chief, does that look like a fire hose that's serviceable?
No, it is not serviceable.
And are you aware that that's the fire hose that Captain David Ware and firefighter Devin Barkley had to use to fight their way out of a fire after Battalion Chief Sean Johnson told them to go defensive and left them in the house?
I object relevancy.
As far as I know, that this
Call the
hose
roll.
was utilized. I don't know the
Chief,
details. Yes, sir.
if I can interrupt, when one of the parties make an objection, if you would please pause your answer so that I'll have an opportunity to rule on the objection.
Got you. Understood. My apology.
No problem. No problem. I just want to make certain that Mr. Newman, the court reporter, is able to get everything down that's being said. All right. And now, Chief, if you would, sir, repeat your answer.
So according to the package I saw, this picture is included in it, and it's my understanding that this hose was utilized on the scene. I cannot verify or corroborate what you're saying about it being utilized by company or engine 22 or them being left in the house.
Would you agree that being left inside of a house on a flashover because your battalion chief didn't make sure you were out before they went defensive would be a memorable event for a firefighter?
Well, definitely so.
Okay, then we'll ask him later. Let me show you what's been marked as C8. It's the city's C8. Now, Ms. Baytop didn't walk you through that. Ms. Harmon, can you pull that up for us? Thank you. And if we can go to the bottom, you'll see that there's some questions that Chief Middlebrooks posed during the course of this investigation. Now, this incident took place June 27th and 28th of 2019, correct?
Yes.
And these questions were asked about a month later, correct?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Dwyer. Hope all is well. I have a few additional questions. Did you at any time enter the structure without your crew? Number two, during an after-action review meeting, did you admit to entering the structure without your crew? Now, number two gets to the heart of this issue of whether or not he entered alone, correct?
Mm-hmm. No,
Okay, if we could,
let me clarify what this is saying. From what I'm seeing, it's saying it has nothing to do with he entering alone. Did he enter without his crew? And it goes back to the responsibility of the company officer, which he is responsible for himself or herself, as well as the crew members.
right, because this danger of leaving two seasoned firefighters putting their equipment on is unacceptable, correct?
No, it's more about crew integrity and the assignment being given to the unit versus the individual.
Scroll up. When you talk about crew integrity as also something so far as scene integrity to make sure everybody's safe, correct?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so Danny Dwyer here states, yes, ma'am, we had a confirmed entrapment declared by the arrival of E22. So that's where we get into, we're in life-saving mode, which is the highest order of a firefighter, correct?
Correct.
Both of my drivers had to fully dress out on arrival. When I had a face-to-face with Captain Ware on the A side, he said he needed a search ASAP. Captain Ware ordered Danny Dwyer to enter that house, didn't he?
No, he did not.
Okay, we'll ask him. At the same time, Chief Johnson assigned us to a primary search, us as in David Ware's company, Engine 22 and Truck 16, correct?
According to what you said, yes.
Those are two superiors that are saying you're on primary search, right?
Chief Johnson is the primary. He's the superior.
Are you stating that Captain David Ware was not superior in rank to Danny Dwyer on June 27th, 2019?
What I'm saying is that Danny Dwyer was acting as the captain of Truck 16. And so he was responsible for his unit, as well as Captain Ware was responsible for his. Ultimately, the ranking official was Chief Johnson.
Chief Johnson was responsible for everybody's safety that day, right?
Overall, yes.
When the door was popped, we had very favorable conditions to effect a rescue. We only had smoke about midway up to the door frame. Did I read that accurately?
Yes.
Given that my drivers were getting dressed, I made the decision to enter with E22 to begin the primary, correct?
Yes.
I located the victim and had her out in less than 1 minute, 50 seconds. So to answer your question, yes, I did enter the house without my two drivers, correct?
Yes,
And by the way, you mentioned something about Battalion Chief Sean Johnson. You agree that before Sean Johnson got there, Captain Ware was actually the incident commander, right?
it was.
So he had the ability to give orders that night, correct?
Yes, he did.
Chief Johnson asked at the critique if I entered without my drivers, and I explained the same thing to him. So yes, I did admit that in the critique. This last sentence, I did not believe, and it's blanked out, but I'll submit to you that Sally Scrine had an extra 60 to 90 seconds to wait for my drivers, so I entered with engine 22. Did I read that accurately?
Yes, you did.
So we know from C5 and C6 that the two other members of the crew did not get there in time for Sally Scrine to have a chance for a rescue, because by the time they hit the door, it was in flashover, correct?
Correct.
And by the time they hit the door, Danny Dwyer already had Sally Scrine out of the business, out of the house, right?
Correct.
So had he waited, Sally Scrine would have lost her opportunity to be rescued from that house, correct?
Not necessarily so. As you stated earlier, the assignment was given to engine 22 and truck 16. From what I have read in the package, Captain Dwyer or Lieutenant Dwyer at the time assigned himself to engine 22's crew and went in, but his crew was still preparing and or making their way to the door.
Chief, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I think you're being very cooperative, but I'm just going to give you the benefit of that. You didn't understand my question.
Okay. Let me hear your
If the
question.
flashover was present when the rest of the crew from truck 16 got to the porch,
Mhm.
so they couldn't enter, and Danny Dwyer was already coming out, then if Danny Dwyer had waited for his crew to get dressed, there would not have been an opportunity for Sally Scrine to get out of that house, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Do you believe that a civilian can survive in a flashover without protective equipment?
No, what you stated earlier, if I can share with you, what you stated earlier is that the assignment for the primary search was given to engine 22 and truck 16, correct? And if that were the case, then engine 22 would have been responsible for going ahead and going in the structure. And 16's crew would be waiting, or excuse me, the captain or lieutenant would be waiting for his crew to make it to the front door. And if the conditions allowed them to complete the assignment, they would. But if the conditions had changed, then their assignment would change, which it did.
So, Chief, engine 22 went in with two people. One has a hose, right?
Correct.
And their obligation is to get to the source of the fire and then work backwards, correct? Towards the exit.
So conceptually, yes, but you can search under hose line cover.
And that's what Danny Dwyer did. He searched under hose line cover behind a captain, David Ware, with 20 years of experience and a 1 3/4 inch line. And had he waited and not done that, there was a flashover and nobody would have been able to enter, correct?
No, I don't agree with that.
You're just not going to admit that by the time that crew from truck 16 got to the door, there was no opportunity to get Sally Scrine, are you?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that the crew was in there, 22's crew was in there. And so while they are extinguishing the fire, to a degree, they are doing a hasty search. What I am sharing with you is that Lieutenant Dwyer was responsible for truck 16. And him leaving and deciding to go inside compromised that unit's ability to complete its task whenever they got there.
And Sally Scrine was not at the rear of the house. She was in the front living room, correct?
I don't know where Sally Scrine was.
That's not important.
Relevance, sir.
Sustain.
Well, if I could respond, Mr. Sloan, this is the
Yes, sir.
sole person who is who is testifying on behalf of the city. And the fact that the engine 22, who he says could have searched, had to go to a different part of the building in order to go to the source of the fire, which they're trained to do, and the victim was in another part of the building, I think that's a reasonable question, and it is relevant.
The question, Ms. LoRusso, as I recall, was whether or not Ms. Scrine was in the living room, and whether she was in the living room, the bedroom, or the kitchen, I don't think is relevant to the issues that are before this board.
So Chief Smith, what distance from the front door was Ms. Scrine when she was on the ground?
As I stated before, I did not know where Ms. Scrine was located in the structure.
So Danny Dwyer made a judgment call to go in to the house and enter the house behind engine 22 and fire support to search for a victim, and wound up pulling her out, correct?
Yes,
And as a flashover instructor, that's a judgment call that you have him teach firefighters in the city of Atlanta during your flashover simulator, correct?
yes, he was working as an instructor.
That's all I have.
Ms. Baytop, anything on redirect?
Just a few questions, Chief. It's going to be real quick. Just for to get back to the relevance of this case, again, to reiterate, the charge that Lieutenant Dwyer was charged with has absolutely nothing to do with if he did or did not enter in with another crew, correct?
Correct.
It has everything to do with the fact that he did not enter in with his crew members, which is the root of this case itself, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything else that you feel is relevant for this board to know about the matter and the integrity of the fire scene on that particular date?
No, I think it's all in the case.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Recross Mr. LoRusso.
Yes, sir. Chief, in the packet, the city's exhibits, we have the entire OPS investigation, your entire internal affairs investigation, correct?
Yes,
And no one else was disciplined on the scene, correct?
I don't have that package. The package I have is on Mr. Dwyer.
Is it your understanding that anyone else was disciplined on the scene? So for instance, for not evacuating engine 22 prior to giving an order to go defensive?
Not that I'm aware of.
And it's your understanding that nobody was disciplined for losing track of engine 22 inside of a flashover fire?
Not that I'm aware of.
And it's your understanding that nobody else was disciplined on the scene for leaving a door open that caused the flashover to start with?
I don't think that would have been a disciplinary matter, but not that I'm aware of.
So, Chief, are you telling this board that City of Atlanta policy prevents a firefighter with hose support and coverage from entering a dwelling to rescue a woman when it can be done safely?
No, I'm not saying that. And it
Well,
has,
what you,
it has
go ahead,
no-
I'm sorry.
It has nothing to do with the outcome. I think why we are here is the appropriate action or the actions of the company officer at that time of truck 16, which was the separation of the crew and him acting or freelancing and operating by himself.
And Chief, you made it very clear that it's the fact that he went in the house while his crew was not able to go in the house because they were not geared up, that has caused this issue because he left them unattended, correct?
Correct.
So your policy prevents a firefighter from taking advantage of a 60-second window to go into a house and safely rescue someone when they have hose support.
Our policy protects the individuals that are entering into the IDLH. It's not about the 60-second window.
And you keep using the term injury, IDLH, immediately dangerous to life and health, correct?
That's correct.
And no one was in more immediate danger to life and health than Sally Scrine on June 27th, 2019. What is there?
I could agree with that, yes.
That's all I have.
And Chief, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Baytop asked you to define freelancing, and she gave a definition in her question that you agreed to.
Yes, sir.
You gave a definition of freelancing that was somewhat similar, but different.
Okay.
Is the word freelancing defined anywhere in your rules of engagement?
No.
All right. And in the rules of engagement, is there anything that says that one person on a crew cannot leave that crew and assist someone else on another crew?
No, there's nothing that says you cannot assist another crew.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Baytop, any redirect in light of my questions?
I'm sorry, no, sir.
All right, and Mr. LoRusso, any cross-examination in light of my questions?
No, sir.
Chief, thank you so much, sir. Is he excused, Ms. Baytop?
If we could keep him, please.
All right, then I guess you're not excused, but I guess Ms. Harmon will place you into the witness room, as it were. So I would ask that you not discuss your testimony with anyone.
Okay, thank you. Will do.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Sloan, could I
Ms.
indulge the board for about a 5-minute bio break? I'm sorry if Ms. Baytop is done. I know that that's her last witness, but.
And I have no problem. Is that your last witness, Ms. Baytop?
I have one other witness.
Okay. Well, it's been about 90 minutes, Mr. LoRusso. We'll take, it's now 11:21. We'll reconvene at about 11:26.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Moment. All right. Everyone's back. Ms. Baytop, you indicated that you have one, or you have another witness. I shouldn't say one more witness, but you have an additional witness.
Correct.
All right. And if you would call that witness, please, ma'am.
Sure, that would be Mr. Daniel Dwyer.
All right. Mr. Dwyer. I didn't hear you, so I don't know if you're on mute.
Mine's on.
Yes, sir. I can hear you. The microphone
Okay.
on my computer.
I need to make certain that the court reporter is able to hear you.
Okay.
All right. And Captain Dwyer, do you have any objections to taking the notes, sir?
No, sir.
If I could get you to raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right. Take your hand down. Ms. Baytop.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dwyer. How are you?
I'm doing well, ma'am. How are you?
Good, thank you. How long were you employed with the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department before you resigned?
A little over 15 years.
Okay. And approximately how much of that time did you spend in the capacity of an officer in charge or a lieutenant or operating as a captain?
I was promoted to lieutenant in 2014 and then left in 2020, so approximately 6 years.
Okay. So as in AFRD employee for those 15 years, or approximately 15 years, you're well versed in the policies and procedures of Atlanta Fire Rescue, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And as an officer in charge for those approximate 6 years, you were also well versed in the standards, expectations, and responsibilities of that position, correct?
Correct.
Okay. At the fire scene or at a fire scene, who would be the person who is ultimately in charge of the entire operation?
The highest ranking officer, or
Okay.
usually the incident commander. They kind of
Okay.
go interchangeably.
Gotcha. And would this be the same person who is ultimately in charge of giving assignments to each fire unit that's on the scene?
Eventually, within the AFRD's policy, the first arriving company officer or officer in charge is the initial incident commander on any scene. And then when the highest ranking, and in this case, a fire scene or something where multiple units arrive, the first arriving battalion chief would eventually take over as the incident commander from that initial officer.
Okay, so again, ultimately, when it comes to giving assignments, the incident commander is the one who gives the assignments for everyone on that fire scene.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Does every unit have a unique assignment or function?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when those assignments are given to each unit, would you agree that it is important that each person within that unit cohesively work together with their crew members?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why is working together with your crew on a fire scene important?
Again, to maintain crew integrity and to be able to have an idea of where my personnel are or the officer's personnel are in that capacity.
Okay.
Whether
And
that's
so-
inside the building, whatever their assignment is.
Yes, sir. And so can you explain why it is important for no one person to deviate, stray, or depart from their crew members?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Can you tell us the importance of why, let me say it this way. Can you tell us why it is important for no one person to deviate, stray, or depart from their crew members? What is the importance of that?
So the initial incident commander, whoever's in charge at that point, can track their companies.
Okay. And when assignments are given out, would you agree that no one should be functioning contrary to that assignment?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that also means that no one should be fulfilling the unit's assignment without their crew members, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You are familiar with the rules of engagement, SOG, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay. And within that SOG, there are clear do's and don'ts, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Harmon, if you would please, on the screen, if you would place C4 back up for me, please. Thank you. And Ms. Harmon, if you'll go down to point number 5. Thank you. Mr. Dwyer, under bullet number 5, it talks about accountability, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And under the fireground accountability, at the time of that incident, which level of accountability would you fall under?
The company officer level.
Okay. The first bullet that is under company officer level, can you read that first bullet out loud?
Maintain situational awareness.
Okay. And did you, in fact, at the time of this incident or during this incident, did you, in fact, maintain situational awareness?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you read the second bullet out loud, please?
Stay true to assignment and location.
Okay. And during the time of this incident, did you, in fact, stay true to assignment and location?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you read the third bullet out loud?
Maintain awareness of all crew members and keep them within voice and touch distance while in an IDLH environment.
Okay. And during the incident, did you in fact maintain awareness of all crew members and keep them within voice and touch distance while in IDLH environment?
Yes, ma'am, to the first part, and then due to the fact that they were not in an IDLH environment, the second part doesn't exactly apply here.
Okay, so would you agree that this particular bullet does not allow for the company officer to pick and choose which ones apply and which ones do not?
No, ma'am, I don't agree with that.
Okay, so with that bullet, it says maintain awareness of crew members, and it's not an or there, and keep them within voice and touch distance while in IDLH environment. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question again is, did you maintain awareness of all crew members and keep them within voice and touch distance while in IDLH environment?
And my answer, ma'am, is the same. I did maintain awareness of all the crew members, but during the rescue, my two drivers were not in an IDLH environment.
Okay, and that would be a no.
Objection. I believe that misstates his testimony. He's been asked this twice now, and I believe his answer speaks for itself.
And it does.
Mr. Dwyer, Miss Harmon, if you would please, can you place on the screen C8? Thank you. Mr. Dwyer, do you recognize this document?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, and would this be a communication between you and Battalion Chief at the time, Michelle Middlebrooks?
It is.
Okay. At this time, the city would like to enter into evidence C8.
No objection.
Submit it.
Okay, Mr. Dwyer, Chief Middlebrooks asked you two simple questions. And the first question that she asked you was, did you at any time enter the structure without your crew? And your response was what?
Yes.
Okay. And her second question was, during an after action review meeting, did you admit to entering the structure without your crew? And your response was what?
Yes.
Okay. So you did, and you do admit to entering the structure without your crew, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you go down to, I believe that is the second sentence where it starts with when I had a face-to-face, it goes down and you use the reference us. Chief Johnson assigned us to a primary search. Who exactly are you referring to when you say us?
The company.
Okay, and that company would be specifically who?
On this occasion, it would be myself, Sergeant Mike Allen, and Sergeant Rod Sewell.
Okay, so that's truck number 16, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Of which you were the officer in charge, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the assignment was given to truck 16's crew to fulfill and not for you to do the primary search without them, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you entered that structure, Chief Johnson had no idea that you went in by yourself, did he?
Well, I didn't go in by myself, ma'am.
Okay. When you entered that structure without your crew, did Chief Johnson have any idea that you went in without your crew?
I can't answer that. I don't know what was in Chief Johnson's head at that moment.
Okay. Did Chief Johnson give the assignment, as you just stated, to truck number 16, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, I'm gonna pass it. I'm gonna go back to it. So then you go on within the statement. to state that given that your drivers were getting dressed, you made the decision to enter with engine 22 to begin the primary. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What assignment did engine 22 have? Since you were given the assignment, your truck, your unit was given the assignment for primary search. What was engine 22's assignment?
Fire attack or extinguishment.
Okay. So you went in and conducted the primary search by yourself?
No, ma'am.
Okay, who else was doing a primary search?
As Chief Smith stated during his testimony, it is assumed that as an engine company moves in for extinguishment, they have the ability to search simultaneously as they're moving the hose line forward to the room of origin to begin extinguishing. So in theory, they are also searching as they're also on extinguish, or excuse me, they're also searching as they're doing the extinguishment.
Okay, so again, just to reiterate, engine 22 had their own assignment, correct?
Correct. It's kind of a twofold assignment.
And truck 16 that you're responsible for had your own assignment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Within the rules of engagement, thank you, Ms. Harmon. Within the rules of engagement, does that SOP provide the company officer any room to make the decision to enter a structure without their crew members?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time.
All right, Ms. LoRusso, cross-examination.
Yes, sir. You were asked a question about the ROE policy. Maintain awareness of all crew members and keep them within voice and touch distance while in the IDLH environment. The key point of that entire bullet point is while in the IDLH environment, correct?
Yes.
Was your crew ever in the IDLH environment, specifically Sewell and Allen?
Not prior to the rescue, no.
In fact, the rescue was complete.
I'm so sorry. You cut that answer was a little, Mr. Dwyer, could you repeat that answer, please?
No, they were not in an IDLH environment prior to victim removal.
And Mr. Dwyer, you, for some reason, it appears that you are sounding a little more distant than you did. I don't know if you need to move closer.
Yes, sir. Do you need me to repeat my answer?
Yeah, one more time, please. Say it. You kind of tailed off at the end of that your second time, too.
The two members that were assigned on truck 16 that night, the two drivers were not in an IDLH environment prior to the rescue or victim removal.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And by the time your drivers were able to suit up, the IDLH environment was too dangerous for anyone else to go in to the house, correct?
Yes.
So had you waited for them to suit up and get on the porch, there would have been no opportunity for Sally Scrine to get out of the house, correct?
Correct.
And because engine 22 was going to the back source of the fire, they were not able to pull Sally Scrine out of the house, correct?
Correct.
So engine 22 was in effect with a 1 3/4 inch line, providing an opportunity for someone to do exactly what you did. Enter the house through the threshold, search quickly for victims, and pull Sally Scrine out of the house, correct?
Yes.
Now, you were asked a question as to whether or not Chief Johnson even knew you were in the house. Do you recall that question?
I do.
You recall where Chief Johnson parked his vehicle in front of the house?
I do.
And Chief Johnson is supposed to have line of sight and be able to see what's happening at the front of the house, correct?
Correct.
Do you agree that the A side of the house was the entry where everyone was trying to determine whether they could make access for the entrapment?
Yes.
And Battalion Chief Johnson did not have access because he parked with engine 22 blocking him, didn't he?
Yes.
Nothing prevented Battalion Chief Johnson from moving his vehicle so he could see what happened and what was going on the porch, did it?
No.
So the entire time that you were making decisions in a 60-second window, whether to go in and get Sally Scrine while your crew is trying to put their equipment up, Chief Johnson was parked behind engine 22 and couldn't see the front of the house at all, correct?
Correct.
In your opinion, with 20 years of firefighting experience, is that why Chief Johnson left engine 22, specifically David Ware and Devin Barkley, inside of the house during a flashover?
I would
I
say.
object. I object.
She objected.
Basis?
I'm sorry.
What's the basis for the objection?
The basis is the relevance for Chief, Battalion Chief Sean Johnson's actions, where he was parked or where he was not parked. We are here for the actions of Lieutenant Dwyer.
Ms. LoRusso, any response?
I would love to respond to that. The only person who found fault with Danny Dwyer, Battalion Chief Johnson. The only person who left 2 firefighters in a building and almost got them burned alive, Battalion Chief Johnson. The only person who parked where he couldn't see what was going on, Battalion Chief Johnson. And this witness has been asked questions as to whether or not he was following the orders and doing what Battalion Chief Johnson wanted him to do on the scene. So it's absolutely relevant what happened inside the house and why Chief Johnson was not aware, and whether or not Chief Johnson was frankly doing his job the way he's supposed to. All we've heard is these rules of engagement. We've seen them 6 times now, and it's relevant as to whether or not the only person who's not here to testify, Battalion Chief Johnson, as to whether or not he was doing his job.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
Can you repeat the question?
We can have the court reporter read it back, Mr. Sloan, or I can probably repeat it. Your
Mr.
preference?
Newman, if you read it back, please, sir.
1 second, please. And your opinion, with 20 years of firefighting experience, that Chief Johnson left engine 22 specifically David Ware and Devin Barkley in the house during the flashover. That's the real-time question that I got. It may not be 100% complete.
And is the reason, if Mr. Sloan, if I could complete, is the reason that happened because he did not have line of sight and parked his vehicle between engine 22 and the house?
In the house.
And yes, that is a contributing factor.
All right, Mr. Dwyer, I don't think Mr. Newman got that response at all.
Yes, it is a contributing factor.
I did. I thank you. I accidentally had not taken myself off mute before I started writing again, but I did hear him. Thank you.
All righty.
Mr. Newman, can I continue?
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. Does anything in any City of Atlanta policy for the Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department prevent you in this scenario from taking advantage of a window to enter a house with another crew, to work with another crew, to rescue a citizen and give them a chance at life?
No.
The ROE policy does not address the scenario you were in, correct?
No.
When you were asked by Battalion Chief Johnson why you went in the house, how did you explain the decision that you made?
I explained the decision based off of the rules of engagement policy and the amount of fire involvement, the location of the involvement, and the amount of survivable space that we had at that moment.
And what level of experience and what experiences do you have that the City of Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department have paid for you to have that went into that decision that you made on June 27th and 28th, 2019?
To name one, I have been a flashover instructor for the City of Atlanta Fire Department since approximately 2018, and dozens of years in very busy companies that have a lot of active fire duty. I took the conditions that we had initially and determined there was a large amount of survivable space for Mrs. Green and decided to go in and effect a rescue.
What were the conditions that you said created a survivable space? If you could explain to Mr. Sloan the points that you were looking at as you come up, and we'll see them on your helmet cam in a moment, but what are those conditions that Danny Dwyer, flashover instructor, 20-year firefighter, was looking at? It may not be apparent to people like me who stay away from burning buildings.
Mr. Sloan, this house, when we arrived, even with the extended response, we arrived and there was a body of fire in the left rear corner of the home, which we found out later was in the kitchen. So if you can picture the left rear corner, the left side and the rear of the home had fire blowing out the windows on that corner. As smoke travels through a building and it goes from kitchens into hallways into other rooms, it slows down because of the different patterns and pathways that it has to take. And when it slows down, it begins to permeate out the front door, which we opened to enter with the hose line and to start to search the front door of the home. When we arrived and the front door was opened, we had what's called lift. And what that means is the body of smoke rises up and eventually will start coming out. And as the fire grows, because there's fresh air being induced into the home at that point, or into the container, in any container, it's going to grow. And that smoke level is slowly going to go from head high at the top of the door frame and eventually get down to the point where it is all the way down to the threshold. And that at that point is indicative of a flashover. When the door was opened by truck 25, we got that lift and the smoke was about chest high on me. I'm about 6'4". So that said, we had 3.5-ish feet of good breathable air, meaning that if any victim that was unprotected was lying in a bed, on a couch, or even better on a floor, they had good air in a survivable space.
And you were aware that there was an entrapment that night, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you would expect that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. You said it quick. You were aware that there was what that night?
Survivable space, good air.
Mr. LoRusso, your question. I'm sorry. You just kind of.
No, that's okay, Mr. Newman. You are one of the most important people here at this hearing. Don't hesitate to interrupt.
You are aware that there was something that night. You
An
guys are just kind of
entrapment.
going quickly here. I'm sorry.
That's all right. An entrapment, ENTRAPMENT.
Got it. Thank you. You could start over, please. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So you were aware when you were on the porch that there was an entrapment in the building, correct?
Correct.
And when you mentioned survivable space, you are aware that a private citizen who does not have personal protective equipment will not survive the gases and heat in a fire if that smoke and that fire gets to below waist level. Fair statement?
Fair statement.
And when you were on the porch with engine 22 with a charged 1 3/4 inch line, you recognized that there was a survivable space and an opportunity to make a rescue, correct?
Correct.
If you had waited for engineers Sewell and Allen to get their equipment on and come up on the porch before you attempted to enter the building, would Sally Scrine have had a chance to be rescued from that fire?
No.
Was that the only opportunity she had to get rescued?
Yes.
That's all I have right now.
All right. Ms. Baytop, anything on redirect?
Just one or two, perhaps, Sir Chair. Mr. Dwyer, you stated earlier, and I just want to clarify or to ask this again. The policy with C4, the rules of engagement, as the company officer, the policy does not permit you or give room for you to make judgment calls, correct?
No, it's a guideline.
I'm sorry, your answer was, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, ma'am. It's a guideline. It gives us guidelines to follow when operating on a fire scene.
I have no further questions.
All right. Anything on recross, Mr. LoRusso?
No, sir.
All right. And does the city have any additional witnesses?
No, sir, the city rests. And Sir Chair, if you please, would I know that you so eloquently allowed us to know that we are on a timed schedule. Could you please allow me to know how much time I do have left?
And that's what I'm doing at this point in time, is trying to
Thank you.
add it up. And Ms. Baytop, I have that you have 39 minutes remaining. I'm sorry. 29 minutes. I'm subtracting. And Mr. Rosso, let me.
Thank you, sir.
30, 31. Have 38 minutes.
Thank you.
All right.
That match. Hang on one second. We're keeping track here too, sir. We want to verify that. Mr. Sloan, my staff is saying that we have 43 and Ms. Baytop actually has 39, not 29.
Well, if you're subtracting from 90, Ms. Baytop will have 39.
Okay.
All right. But what I was doing, I took off 10 minutes each for opening and closing. So
I
that
see.
gives 80 minutes for questioning.
Okay.
So that means, that's why I say Ms. Baytop has 29.
I understand. Thank you. I just wanted to
Unless
make sure
Ms.
we were.
Baytop does not wish to make a closing argument, then she could use the full 39 on questioning.
That's fine, sir. Thank you for clarifying. I leave the math to people who are smarter than me, which is not hard to find somebody.
Well, then I normally do the same thing, Mr. LoRusso. Now, the city has rested. Mr. LoRusso, witnesses that you'd like to call on behalf of Mr. Dwyer.
Yes, sir. Captain David Ware. He should be in the waiting room.
All right. Captain Ware, you're on mute. Are you able to hear us, sir? If you'd unmute yourself for me, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Captain Ware, you've been called as a witness by Ms. LoRusso, Mr. Dwyer's lawyer. Captain Ware, do you have any objections to taking an oath, sir?
I don't.
If I could get you to raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth?
I do.
If I could, sir, get you to state your name for the record, where you are employed, and how long you have been so employed. You can take your hand down.
David Ware, been employed for 23 years, City of Atlanta Fire Department.
All right. Mr. LoRusso, he's your witness.
Good afternoon, Captain Ware. How are you?
Doing fine. How you doing, sir?
All right, I appreciate you appearing here today. I'm going to be pretty quick. We're obviously under a time deadline. I don't know if you've been to one of these before, but I'm going to try to move through this quickly. I want to call your attention to a fire on Collier Road, 3412 Collier Road on June 27th and 28th, 2019. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
And were you with Engine 22 at the time?
Yes, sir.
When you were on the front porch, did you have a firefighter with you? I think Devin Barkley.
Yes, sir.
What instructions were you given by Battalion Chief Sean Johnson when he became the incident commander?
He didn't give me any instruction. I was given the instruction prior to him getting there.
Were you the incident commander prior to him getting there?
Yes, sir.
How many times have you been an incident commander, Captain?
Oh, too many to count.
Are you supposed to keep track of the front of the house so you can watch your folks?
Yes, sir.
At all times, are you supposed to keep track of your folks and make sure you know who's in the building and who isn't?
Yes, sir.
What assignment did you have on the at the Collier Road when you saw Lieutenant Dwyer?
Okay, so I was in command, and Lieutenant Dwyer was on the porch with me and Barkley and another crew. And I came across the radio and told him, I said, "Hey, Lou, you come with me. You come with me." We made entry, 25s, cut the door in. We made entry. Me and Lieutenant Dwyer had done this on several occasions without even having to talk. So I mean, he went to search for the woman, and Barkley and I went to the fire to keep the fire off of him and the victim.
Did you, as the incident commander, order Lieutenant Dwyer to enter the building behind you as you provided hose support?
No, so I told him to come with me. I told him, "Come on, go with me."
So he basically joined as part of your crew in an effort to try to rescue Miss Scrine, correct?
Yes, sir.
And were you aware at that time that there was an entrapment in that house?
Yes, sir. Prior to that, probably about 15 minutes prior to us getting there. As soon as we got the call, it came out with a house fire with entrapment.
Is it fair to say that your priority on the porch when you gave that order to Danny Dwyer was to protect the life of Ms. Scrine or any occupant who was entrapped in an IDLH?
Yes, sir. That's fair.
And
That
what's
was
an
the main-
IDLH?
Sir,
What's an IDLH?
immediate danger to health and life.
So the only person who was in an environment that was an immediate danger to life and health prior to you entering was the woman entrapped in that house, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you take an oath as a firefighter to protect the citizens and protect their lives on scenes like this?
Yes, sir.
Where were you and firefighter Barkley when the order was given by Battalion Chief Sean Johnson to go defensive?
Fighting for our lives in destruction.
Should you have been left alone in that fire when the order was given to go defensive?
At no time, sir. We were unaccounted for because somewhere along the line, somebody wasn't paying attention.
And who do you believe that somebody was?
Sean Johnson.
If Sean Johnson was able to see the front of the house and wasn't blocked by Engine 22, would he have been able to count the bodies that went in and count the bodies that came out?
That, along with paying attention to the radio traffic, he would have
And
been able to know.
And as part of the radio traffic, he also would have been able to do a radio check and ask that all units were accounted for before he went defensive, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
When he went defensive, at that point, everybody left the front porch and moved away from the structure, correct?
I couldn't say I was on the inside doing what we were supposed to do, but to my knowledge, they would have been moving out.
The fire hose that you and Barkley had in your hands that night, what happened to it?
The sheath of the hose burnt all the way through and just left a line in it.
Can we pull up A9? Ms. Harmon? I appreciate your help. Now, it's been posited that somebody was not able to identify whose hose this was. Was this the hose that you and firefighter Devin Barkley were fighting for your lives to get out of that fire?
Yes, sir, that is my hose.
You ever come close to dying, that close to dying in a fire, Captain Ware?
Not like that.
You
Sir,
saw
that-
the, go ahead, sir.
Oh, that was pretty, it was traumatic, not just for me, but the guy that was with me probably had at the time a couple of years on. So, I mean, just being a part of the crew, his mom called me and saying that he was having trouble sleeping since this incident happened.
Captain Ware, when you saw the conditions in that fire as you went in with firefighter Devin Barkley and with Danny Dwyer, did you believe those conditions were right for a rescue based on the environment that you saw?
Yes, and more than perfect. There's a perfect scenario to go
And
in to make the rescue and come out.
And Captain Ware, there were other people on that porch. Why did you designate Danny Dwyer to come in with you?
Because he was ready to go. It was me, it was Barkley, myself, and Dwyer that was ready to go.
As the incident commander, did you also take into account his experience and training?
All the time.
Were you at the after action meeting that took place with Battalion Chief Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Did Battalion Chief Johnson admit that he lost track of you and Devin Barkley on the scene?
Yes, sir.
Was Battalion Chief Johnson ever taken to task, reprimanded, or disciplined for losing track of two firefighters and leaving them in a house on a flashover?
Sir,
I object.
Sustain.
That's fine. I'll move on.
do I not answer the question?
You don't
You
worry
do
about
not
it.
answer the question.
Sir?
Do
You do
not.
not answer the question.
Okay.
Captain Ware, that fire hose that we see, that's a fair and accurate representation of the hose you had that night. I'm going to move to admit it.
That's it.
Any objections, Ms. Baytop?
I do object to the relevance of it being submitted. It has absolutely nothing to do with the actions that Lieutenant Dwyer took.
All right. Submitted over the city's objection.
That's all the questions I have for this witness.
All right. Ms. Baytop, do you have any questions of Captain Ware?
Yes, sir, I do. Good afternoon, Captain Ware.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Okay, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Miss Harmon, if you could please pull up City's Exhibit number 8. Captain Ware, I'm going to ask you to follow along with me. This is a statement that has already been entered into evidence between then Battalion Chief Middlebrooks and then Lieutenant Dwyer. I know you stated that you were the first to arrive on the scene, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, which therefore led for you at that particular time to initially be the incident commander, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When exactly did, or are you aware of the point in time when Battalion Chief Johnson appeared on the scene?
After we were on the porch. That's when after we were on the porch.
Okay, so once you were on the porch, you were aware at that point that Battalion Chief Johnson now had assumed the position of incident commander.
No, I don't know that. I just know
Okay.
that they reported on scene. Battalion 5's arrived on scene.
Okay, on scene. And this is before you all entered the structure, correct? The house?
Yes.
Okay. If I could draw your attention to this particular memo, Lieutenant Dwyer states that both of my drivers had to fully dress out on arrival. When I had a face-to-face with Captain Ware on the A side of the home, he said he needed a search ASAP. Would that be a fair and accurate statement?
It would be.
Okay. And he goes on to say, at the same time, Chief Johnson assigned us to a primary search. Would that be a fair and accurate statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so before even entering into the building, Chief Johnson, according to Lieutenant Dwyer's statement, Chief Johnson now is given the assignment directly to Truck 16 to do the primary search, correct?
But yes, okay.
What was your, when I say your, I'm referring to Engine 22. What was Engine 22's assignment on that
Fire
fire
attack.
incident?
Fire attack. 22
Okay.
Engine 22 is first on scene. We was fire attack. Couldn't get in the building. I don't know if y'all received it or not, but it's been played 1,000 times. The audio that goes along with the scenario with this fire at that time, it's word for word. Everything's, I mean, the audio, the video, and all that's word for word. I'm even addressing Lieutenant Dwyer on the radio so everyone can hear what's going on.
Okay, and what was Engine 22's, a part of their assignment, what was their responsibility?
Engine 22?
Yes.
Fire attack and rescue. We were there to keep the occupant and Lieutenant Dwyer safe.
Okay, you said Lieutenant Dwyer, but you do not mention his crew, correct?
Well, his crew was getting ready. That's why I spoke to Lieutenant Dwyer face to face. Said, "Hey, let's go. We got to have a search done ASAP." Because his crew wasn't dressed. His drivers were getting dressed. So by the time the door came open, nobody was ready but Lieutenant Dwyer. Came over the radio and said, "Hey, Lou, you come with me." So everybody be aware of what's going on and where he was.
Okay, and at the time that all this was going on and Chief Johnson is now on scene, who now had the authority and the sole authority to give assignments?
Well, he would have the authority to run the scene, but as far as what's going on inside would be myself. He cannot run the inside of the building from outside the street.
Correct. My question was given the assignment, not inside of the building or the structure, but just the assignments as a whole. he has the authority and he has the rank to be the only one who gives assignments, correct? As the commander, the incident commander.
Okay, yes, as of what's going on the outside.
So he's not responsible for everything in its totality, whether it's in the building or outside of the building?
Yes, he would be the ultimate. Okay, he would be the ultimate. It's his responsibility.
Ms. Baytop, before you continue, Mr. Ware, this is the court reporter. It sounded like, I want to make sure you saying the first name Lou? It sounded like you were saying Lou. Sound like you were saying a nickname. Do you remember that?
Lou, yeah, Lieutenant. Lou, short for Lieutenant. Hey, Lou, you come with me.
Lou. Okay,
Yeah.
Lou for Lieutenant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I have one final question, Captain Ware. If you were in the same position as Lieutenant Dwyer was on that particular day, would your actions have been the same to go in without your crew?
My actions would have been exactly the same. That's what we get paid for, to save lives.
Okay, so do you get paid to not abide by the policies and the rules of the department?
We get paid to save lives, and on occasions, that means doing what it takes to save someone's life. I mean, Ms. Baytop, if you're looking at it from what the city pays us to do, just a brief second, not to look at the policies, because policies and procedures don't save lives. Those firemen save lives.
And does the city pay you to save lives within the parameter of the policies?
Sometimes.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
And Ms. LoRusso, anything on redirect, sir? You on mute?
Thought I had taken it off. Sorry. You were asked about C8. Can we pull that up again, please? About the middle of the page, right where it is. I did not believe, and I'll submit to you that it was redacted, Sally Scrine. I did not believe Sally Scrine, your entrapped person, had an extra 60 to 90 seconds for me to wait for my driver, so I entered with engine 22. Do you agree with Danny Dwyer's assessment, since you were the only other person at the front door at the time when he made that statement?
I do agree.
Do you recall the after action that took place on Ms. Scrine's property or close to it?
Yes, sir.
Was Battalion Chief Johnson incensed, or was he in control?
No, I don't think he's incensed. He's in control.
You think he was in control?
No, not at all.
And when he accused Danny Dwyer of freelancing, did Danny Dwyer explain to him that he did not, that he went in with another crew and what he did was safe?
He did, and Mr. LoRusso, all this is all on the radio traffic from the start. I mean, I don't know what went on from the start, but from the time Battalion 5 left the house, they were lost. They thought they were going to an apartment fire. He's on the radio telling somebody else how to do their job when he has a crew in the house fighting the fire. So if you look at that, none of that goes together. None of that has anything to do with actually what's going on here.
When you said that you said over the radio that you were going in the building with a charge line with firefighter Barkley and Lieutenant Dwyer, that was announced over the radio so the battalion chief would know, correct?
So everyone would know. That's to give everybody a heads up that, hey, these guys are making a push to save the occupant and put the fire out.
And anybody listening to the radio would have known that you and Barkley were still in the house when the order was given to go defensive, correct?
Everybody that's paying attention would have known.
That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
All right, recross, Ms. Baytop.
I just have one question. Captain Ware, how important is maintaining crew integrity?
It's important.
And why is it important?
So you have accountability of everybody.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Can we excuse Captain Ware?
We can.
Captain, thank you so much, sir.
Y'all enjoy your day.
You as well.
Thank you.
LoRusso, if you call your next witness.
One moment, please. I would call Danny Dwyer.
All right, Mr. Dwyer, you're already under oath.
Okay, Mr. Dwyer, before you begin, I was able just in the general sense, when you were giving some of your detailed responses, it kind of sped up and you were tailing off. So just try to make the best effort you can as you're giving an explanation, just to really project yourself.
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you so much.
And if you see him leaning over, Mr. Sloan, I have a microphone on and we're trying to make sure that we can get him as close to one as possible. So thank you.
Okay. All
Can
right.
you tell us how many years you've been with the fire service?
At this point, approximately 24.
And how many years had you been a flashover instructor?
Since 2013, so that puts me at 9.
Please tell Mr. Sloan what a flashover instructor is.
Yes, sir. A flashover, by definition, is a condition that occurs on fire scenes, whether it's in a commercial occupancy or a private home, where by definition, the entire room that is involved in fire at that point, everything reaches its ignition temperature and it all basically lights off at the same time. The city of Atlanta was very fortunate to purchase a flashover simulator a little over 10 years ago, and we were trained by the manufacturers of that prop to be flashover instructors. And since that point, during my tenure with Atlanta, we ran the entire City of Atlanta Fire Department through, in addition to outside agencies from all over the metro Atlanta area and the Southeast eventually.
Can you give an estimate of how many firefighters you have trained in the flashover simulator?
Hundreds.
And is that firefighters of all ranks?
Yes, sir.
So this is not just a basic skill, this is an advanced skill, correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned before about the circumstances when you approach a fire that you're looking for to see if it's right to make a rescue before a flashover occurs, correct?
Correct.
Can we pull up A6, please? And when it comes up, it's, yes, ma'am, Alpha 6. And when it comes up, Lieutenant Dwyer, if you can tell us what we're looking at.
Sir, just pick your voice up just a little bit more, sir.
Yes, sir. You got it. Okay, this is the arrival photo when Truck 16 arrived on the scene on Collier Drive the morning of June 28th of 2019.
And if you can blow that up just a little bit, Ms. Harmon, I thank you very much. Okay, so now we've heard that talk about A, B, C, and D side. The A side is the front of the residence, correct?
Yes.
Where is the fire as you are approaching, as you're coming up?
It is in the back left corner, which is referred to as the Bravo Charlie or BC corner.
So when you approach the house, going through your mind, are you seeing a safe window and potentially safe window at the Alpha side to enter?
Yes.
Were you aware there was an entrapment at the time?
Yes.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of what you saw when you came up to the scene?
Yes.
I'd move to admit A6.
Any objection?
Sorry, no objections.
It's admitted.
If we can bring up A7, please.
Mr. Dwyer, the last thing I'm going to ask of you is just keep your face on the screen because I need to see your visual cues.
Yes, sir. Does that work for you, Mr. Newman?
That's much, if you stay like that, you're going to be fine.
You got it.
Okay, if we can look at A7, tell us what we're looking at there.
This is also an arrival photo of the house on Collier.
Is the A side of the building free of fire?
Yes,
Does the A side of the building look like it's approachable?
yes,
Now, as we look at A6 and A7, did you in fact, with other firefighters, specifically engine 22, did you approach on the porch on the A side of the building?
I did.
Is A7 a fair and accurate depiction of the house at 3412 Collier that we were talking about that on the night of this fire?
Yes,
I would move to admit A7.
Any objection?
No objections.
It's admitted.
We have a video that I'd like you to show, Ms. Harmon. You received it earlier. This is the video we were discussing, Mr. Sloan, Ms. Baytop. I believe Ms. Baytop received it as well. This is the video that was on the news and played over and over again. I'm going to label it A12 if we can.
All right.
That's not the right one. It should be in your email. All right, this is it. And if you can tell us what we're looking at.
this is the front of the home approximately a minute and a half to 2 minutes after the arrival of engine 22 and truck 16, the other units that were operating.
Okay, now in the bottom right, we see somebody either crouching down or kneeling down on the front of the porch. Who is that?
That's myself.
Who is in front of you?
Mrs. Screen.
If we can play the video.
All right, give me just one moment. I'm going to reshare it to ensure that you have sound.
Thank you.
Commander Cruz, we're going defensive. Commander Cruz, we're going defensive. Come off of the porch, we're going defensive. Will you copy that? Still 115 hours. Engine 28, man, we have a victim being pulled out at this time. What side are you on? On the outside, Come out off the porch. I'm clear. Command Atlanta Fire. I switched from offensive to defensive. Receive defensive 01. Come in urgent. I need anyone. Fail. EMS down.
Hey.
Go ahead. Okay, I got.
That's fine. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the front of the house on Collier Drive we've been talking about on June 27, June 28th, at the time that you brought Ms. Scrine out of her house?
Yes.
At this time, I'd move to admit A12.
Any objections?
No objections.
Submitted.
If you can, very briefly describe for us, what are the differences in the conditions you see in that video as opposed to the pictures you saw when you arrived?
On arrival, we had what appeared to be one room involved. Again, on the Bravo Charlie or the back left corner of the home. And then about a minute and a half later, that's when the flashover occurred. And what you see here is a complete involvement of the interior of the home. The entire home was on fire on the inside.
At that point, when you're on the front patio, is that when your crew was dressed and coming up to you?
Yes.
Was it safe for anyone to attempt a primary search at that time?
No.
When we saw that conflagration and we saw the entire house going up in the front, at the end of that video, is that a dangerous situation inside that house?
Absolutely.
Is it a deadly situation inside
Very.
the house? Even for a firefighter with protective equipment?
Yes.
Where is engine 22 and specifically Captain David Ware and firefighter Devin Barkley at the time at the end of that video?
Inside the home.
You hear the order, all units go defensive, and who is saying that?
Chief Johnson.
Is he also calling units off the porch?
Yes.
And when he says that, do all the units come off the porch
Yes.
while 22 is still inside the building?
Correct.
I'd like to bring up A4, please. Now, Mr. Sloan, I want to, this is a public hearing, and I'm going to say this delicately, but this video does not show Ms. Scrine. I won't do it.
All right.
I just flat
Thank
won't
you.
do it. Now, you will see some fuzziness in the video, and I will have the witness explain to you exactly where she is.
Okay.
Okay, now is this video from your helmet cam?
Correct.
So you have your helmet on
It's sitting on the front dash of truck 16 front.
and you are in your turnout gear.
Correct.
So when you arrived on the scene, all you had to do was put your helmet on with your camera and grab your breathing apparatus, correct?
My breathing apparatus was on my back at this point. I had to unbuckle my seatbelt, grab my hand tools, and that was it.
So you were actually wearing your breathing apparatus and your turnout gear and had your helmet in front of you, correct?
Correct.
If we can pause for 1 second. There is a firefighter standing in front of your truck. Is he with his commanding officer
No,
or is he just walking around doing his job?
he is doing his job.
Okay, we can keep going, please. So you're gathering your tools at this point
Yes, sir. The hand tools are in the back seat of the truck.
and you're walking up to the house.
Correct.
And this is where your crew is getting their equipment on.
Correct.
What's happening here?
You can see engine 22 advancing that hose line. The gentleman's holding in his hand is a charged attack line, a 3/4 attack line, and I set my helmet on the floor of the porch to get my face piece on and regulator, and then my hood.
At this point, had you been told by Captain Ware to come in the house and do the primary search
Yes,
because you were told there was an entrapment?
correct.
Are you securing all of your protective equipment at this point?
Yes.
And as you look at the front and as you go to the door, are these the just conditions you described that were ripe for a rescue?
Yes.
You're entering the house now?
I'm giving engine 22 some slack, which is pulling hose for them. There are a lot of bushes and stuff in the front yard that the hose line was getting hung up on. So I was giving them some more hose so they could advance it farther into the home.
Because they're supposed to be going to the source of the fire to give you cover, correct?
Correct.
How many gallons per minute does that hose flow that they have?
I could push up to 250, but it's generally around 200 gallons
Per minute.
per minute.
So tell us what we're seeing.
As soon as I came in the living room, I took a look with my thermal imaging camera and saw some fire where you see right here blowing around the corner. That is Mrs. Screen at the bottom of the lens. There was fire coming down the left side of the home through the dining room and coming towards the front door where we made entry.
Still safe for you to try to effect the rescue at this point.
For just another second, yes.
So what are you doing at this point?
I'm pulling her towards the front door. It was about 12 feet to the front door.
Now you're yelling and we hear yelling. How loud is it inside and around a fire like this?
Extremely loud. If the audio is better, you can hear glass breaking, you can hear the fire burning itself, and you can hear saws operating and people banging on hand tools to get in the building, along with radio traffic.
And what were you solely focused on at this point?
Getting her out of the house.
Is that you saying, help me?
Yeah. Yes.
Trying to signal to people outside to assist you?
Correct.
When the fire became hot, what did you do to protect Miss Scrine?
Lean down on top of her.
How hot did the fire get?
It would be a semi-educated guess, but I would say it was probably pushing 1,000 degrees.
Sir, Mr. Dwyer, I'm hearing you. You're just coming through softly.
I'm sorry.
You're giving explanations. It sounds like you're in the same room with Mr. LoRusso and you're having a conversation. So just do your best. Thank you.
I apologize.
Is there anything you need him to repeat, Mr. Newman?
Not specifically. I mean, I'm getting it. It's just, it's hard to, everybody I think is understanding him, but I'm understanding him and taking it down at the same time. So it's just a little difficult. I'm getting it, but just do your best, Mr. Dwyer.
I appreciate your patience. Thank you. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of what your helmet camera captured on June 27th and June 28th on 2019?
Yes.
At this point, I'd move to admit A4.
Any objection?
No objection.
It's admitted.
You can pull up A1. Tell us what is A1?
This is an incident memorandum regarding the fire at 3412 Collier Drive.
And who wrote this memorandum?
I did.
How many days after this event were you supposedly written up?
I believe, if my count is correct, 6 days.
And in the after action report, the after action meeting that took place, was that on the property of Miss Scrine?
Yes.
And what was Battalion Chief's Johnson's demeanor at that time?
I believe he seemed a bit irritated and defensive.
Did he admit that he lost track of his crews that night?
Yes,
Does this A1 explain what we have been saying? And I'm just going to shorten this in the interest of time, that your crew was not able to get with you. You went in with engine 22 with a charge line on primary search because you knew there was an entrapment.
correct.
And nothing in the policies say you can't combine forces with another crew to accomplish the mission of the Atlanta Fire Department, especially when it comes to saving a life, correct?
Correct.
At this point, I'd like to move to admit A1.
Any objections?
No objection.
It's admitted.
If we can pull up C2. I'll represent to you, this has been admitted. This is the notice of final adverse action where you were suspended for 4 12-hour shifts as a result of the incident on Collier Drive on June 27th and June 28th, 2019. Lieutenant Dwyer, did you violate any City of Atlanta policies, and specifically the ones that you're accused of violating, in the course of your response to the fire on Collier Drive on June 27th and June 28th, 2019?
No.
If you can pull up Exhibit A5, please. Who is that, Lieutenant Dwyer?
Sally Screen,
And how do you know that's her?
because I saw a photo of her on the news the following day.
She was identified by her family members.
Yes, sir.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of what she looked like?
I believe it is.
At this point, I'd move to admit A5.
Any objection?
No objection.
If you had not
Agreed.
entered the house with Engine 22, specifically with Captain Ware and Devin Barkley, and had you waited for the 2 members of your crew, would Sally Skrine had had a chance at life on June 27th or June 28th, 2019?
Absolutely not.
When you made the decision to go into the house with Engine 22, was it your understanding that was consistent with your oath of office to protect the lives of the citizens of the City of Atlanta?
Absolutely.
This is approximately 3 years ago, Lieutenant Dwyer. Same situation, same scenario. Would you make a different decision?
Absolutely not.
That's all the questions I have this time.
All right. And Ms. Baytop? Do you have anything on cross-examination?
I do. I have just maybe a few questions. I certainly don't want to be redundant. But excuse me, Mr. Dwyer, you were just asked if there was anything in the policy that says that you cannot mix crews. And you stated that there is not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But is there anything within the policy that states as the company officer that you are to maintain the integrity of your crew?
Can you ask that again, please? I think I got the first part of your question, not the second.
Okay. But is there anything within the policy, although there may not be anything stated that says that you cannot mix crews, is there anything within the policy that states that you are to maintain the crew's integrity? In other words, that you are to know, excuse me, as the company officer, the awareness of all of your crew members, where they are, what they're doing.
Yes.
Okay. Again, for the record, are you stating that engine 22 had a dual responsibility? I heard you say that earlier. Is that correct? They had a dual responsibility?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of that dual responsibility, you stated earlier that they shared the responsibility of primary search.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was all of engine 22's crew members partaking in their assignment?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So who all was there just one person that was in the doing their assignment as far as engine 22 is concerned? There was only one person doing their assignment?
No.
Okay. So no one person from engine 22 was acting in a solo manner with their assignment?
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question the first time you asked it. So the engine company that night had 3 members assigned to it. The sergeant, who is the driver of the apparatus, the captain, and the firefighter, who we know as Devin Barkley. The captain and the firefighter, Barkley, went inside the house to extinguish a fire and assist with the search as they were doing that. The driver of the apparatus has to stay outside solely and operate the pump that allows water to go from the hydrant through the fire engine and then eventually to the nozzle of the hose that they were operating. So yes, 2 members were inside operating and 1 member was left outside to operate the pump.
Okay, and you were the only one from truck 16 that was on the porch inside the structure? It was only you from truck 16?
Before the flashover, correct.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. LoRusso, anything on redirect, sir?
Very briefly. Lieutenant Dwyer, did you know where the other members of your crew were and what they were doing when you were on the porch?
Yes.
And you said engine 22 had 3 members, a captain, a firefighter, and an engineer. So when Captain Ware took the firefighter into the building, he actually split his crew too, didn't he?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right. Anything else, Mr. LoRusso? Any other witnesses?
No, sir. We are ready to prepare our closing and would like a very, very quick break just to organize thoughts and a,
Yes,
and a
sir.
time check, if you would.
Gosh. Mr. LoRusso, I have you at 17 minutes. Ms. Baytop, I have you at 37. I added back in. I'm subtracting from 90 as opposed to 80. So.
Can we just get a 2-minute break?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's 2 going to be sufficient?
Can we make it 5? That would be much better.
All right, we'll do 5.
Thank you, sir. And we will be ready to do our
reconvene at
closings.
12:56.
We will be ready to do our closings when we come back.
All right. Okay, Ms. Baytop, you have the right to open and conclude, or do you wish to reserve?
I wish to reserve. Thank you.
All right. Ms. LoRusso.
Thank you. I am always amazed when we bring complex cases before hearing officers, and they seem to cut straight through to the issues. And I think sometimes it's because we have the ability to get too wrapped up in our cases, and the people who are the outside observers at the 30,000-foot view can see things more clearly and more simply than we do. And perhaps that's why this system works. Freelancing is not defined in the policy. It's talked about. It's apparently pretty important because it's in there 4 or 5 times, but it's not defined. And a firefighter with 20 years experience should know what it is. And when confronted about freelancing, he said, no, I was not. Nothing in the policy says that you can't regroup and work with another crew when it's necessary and appropriate, especially when it can save a life. Immediately dangerous to life and health. IDLH, you heard that a lot. When Danny Dwyer got off that truck, those firefighters didn't have to go anywhere. They could have sat there and let that house burn. But they knew there was one person who was in an IDLH environment, not Danny's crew, where he would have had to maintain control over them and sight and arm's length. It was Sally Scrine, citizen of the city of Atlanta, a lady who was elderly, lived behind burglar bars, and went to sleep knowing that if she ever needed help, she could call 911. You'll see in C8 those words. I did not believe Miss Scrine had an extra 60 to 90 seconds for me to wait for my drivers, so I entered with engine 22. Now, I told you at the beginning of this might be a case of children playing telephone and things being misunderstood. I just don't see it. I don't see how you write this man up for going in alone and how you have 3 or 4 references in this file that he went in alone when you know he didn't. When you know that the incident commander at the time, Captain Ware, who's on the scene, says, let's go. We got an entrapment. And how nobody apparently took 10 minutes to sit and ask David Ware, why does your hose look like that? Now, I have nothing personal against the chief. I'm sure he's a very nice man. I'm sure he's dedicated his life to fire service. He didn't even know if that was Captain Ware's hose or not. What you're seeing is it just wasn't a focus. Is everybody wanted to find something to fault. So nobody had to look at the fact that 2 firefighters almost died that day because the battalion chief, the incident commander, lost track of them because he couldn't see the front of the house and he didn't use the radio, didn't use the tools that were available to him. You've heard that engine 22 and truck 16 were on the same mission. This is not 2 sets of firefighters who came from either sides of the house and said, hey, let's figure out what to do. Forget the policies. Let's just wing it. Let's freelance. No, they're on the porch. They're at the door. They're both given the same assignment. And they recognized time was of the essence. And Captain Ware looked at a trained firefighter with specific experience in flashover. He looked at the situation. Danny looked at the situation. And they said, let's go. Come with me. And that's what they did. As you've heard from a couple of people, policies are guidelines. They absolutely do not tell you everything to do in every situation. If that was the truth, I could leave this room, go pick up the manual, read it, and be a firefighter riding a truck tomorrow. That'd be ridiculous. And the citizens of the city of Atlanta wouldn't stand for it because they deserve better than that. They deserve professional trained firefighters. And that's what they had. That's what Sally Scrine had on her porch that day. We've heard all this stuff about people being split and crews being split. But in the last 10 minutes of the hearing, we heard that engine 22 was split. Nobody seems concerned about that. This notion that Danny Dwyer left 2 firefighters unattended for makes it sound like they're kids at Six Flags that need a little wrist bracelet so we know who they belong to. They're doing their jobs. They got 20 years of experience. They're professional firefighters. They get off the truck, they put on their equipment, and they run to the front. And by the time they get there, they practice putting on their equipment as quickly as they can. By the time they get there, the opportunity's lost. And that opportunity was an opportunity for Ms. Scrine to live and be rescued. And even though she passed, an opportunity for her family to not have her burned up in a fire. These firefighters know what that's like. You asked a question. Freelancing not defined in the policy. And you also asked another question. Does anything in the policy say that you can't join forces? It was an interesting choice of words. That you can't combine forces, that you can't work together with another crew to save a life. Thank God there isn't such a thing in that policy. Either the policy or the enforcement is an affront to the city of Atlanta and the citizens who rely on those firefighters on those trucks to come save them. I don't think anybody in the city of Atlanta wants to live in an environment if there's a policy that says you can't combine forces with another set of professional firefighters, make a judgment call, and try to save a life. I told you what this case was about, and I showed you Sally Scrine's picture at the beginning of this. And I also told you the why.